Hello and welcome. This is a real brief introduction on two things that can commonly go awry with cardiac pacemakers. Number one, failure to capture, and number two, failure to sense. Normally, when the atria are being paced, you should see a spike immediately followed by the P wave. There should be no delay. The spike should come at the beginning of the P wave. Now, if every P wave has a spike in front of it, as this example does, and I know it's only 2 beats, then you say the atria are being 100% paced. And now for the ventricles. When the ventricles are being paced, you should see a spike immediately followed by the QRS wave. Again, the spike should be at the start of the QRS, not before, not after, but right at the start of the QRS. And again, if every QRS has a spike in front of it, you say that the ventricles are being 100% paced. Now let's look at this rhythm strip. And the first thing you should realize, based on what we just said, is that the pacing is all messed up. And you know this because each spike should immediately be followed by either a P wave or a QRS wave. Now, the only spike in this example that meets that requirement is the first spike. The other 3 spikes occur sporadically. Now, to make things easier for you, this pacemaker in this example only has ventricular pacing. No atrial pacing, just ventricular pacing. In fact, if you look at the P waves, you'll see that the atria are marching along fine about every 4.5 boxes. So there's 5 P waves. The third one is actually buried in the QRS. So the atria are beating fine every 4.5 boxes, which is about a rate of 70. So this is ventricular pacing only. So the atria are doing fine. It's the ventricles that need help, and that's why we have the ventricular pacemaker. But we're having some issues with that, and that gets me to what I want to talk about. So the basic things that you need to know: failure to capture and failure to sense. And these are very easy to see here if you follow along. So in cardiac pacing, the term failure to capture means the following. Number 1, the pacemaker senses a slow intrinsic heart rate. Number 2, the pacemaker sends an impulse. And number 3, the heart does not respond, i.e. it does not capture. So pacemaking spikes appear, but there's no QRS that goes along with the spike. Now, in this example, we just have ventricular pacing only, so we have 4 spikes. The first spike is a normal beat. So we have a pacer spike, and then we have the QRS occurring at the same time. But then we have a long gap until we see the next ventricular beat. So the pacemaker sees this. It sends an impulse to the ventricle, and that's seen as the second spike. But unfortunately, the ventricle does not capture. So hence, there's no QRS at that second pacer spike. This is failure to capture. Failure to sense, on the other hand, goes like this. Number 1, you have a pacemaker that does not sense native rhythm. Hence, number 2, the pacemaker sends an impulse at sporadic times. And number 3, the heart does respond. So pacemaker spikes capture, causing QRS complexes, but they're occurring at the wrong time. So failure to sense is very, very bad, and it can lead to an R on T situation, which can trigger VFib. Now, in this example, the spike appears on the T wave, and that's seen as the third pacer spike. But now, because the heart is not capturing as well, we don't get an R on T. So this is a little bit tricky. The pacer spike, the third spike that you see, is on the T wave. The reason it's there is because the pacemaker failed to sense. However, the heart did not capture. So this is kind of an example of both failure to sense and failure to capture. Now, in summary, in failure to capture, the spikes come at the right time, but the heart won't respond. In failure to sense, the pacer spikes will come at the wrong time, but the heart will capture. Now, in this pictorial shown here, the first pacer spike sensed and captured. The second pacer spike failed to capture. The third pacer spike, the one on the T wave, failed to sense, but then it also failed to capture. And the fourth pacer spike, like the second, failed to capture. So finally, the VV interval is when the pacemaker is set to fire. So here we see the VV interval is about 6.2 boxes, and that setting can be adjusted on the pacemaker. So in this example, if the intrinsic ventricular beat does not pick up, the pacemaker should fire every 6.2 boxes. And that's about all I have. A brief introduction to the terms failure to capture and failure to sense. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope this was useful. So long and goodbye.